Hello and welcome to Talk a Good Game. It's the preview of Arsenal versus West Ham United. Two sides with 0 points in the league will be hoping to get off to a flying start finally. Charlie, like us, they changed their manager in the summer. What do you make of Emery as their appointment?
If I was an Arsenal fan, he wouldn't have been my first choice, but I do think he is a very good appointment. Just because he isn't their best option, I think they had, I still think he's probably second or third. I think he is a very good manager. And with previous clubs, not so much PSG, but before that, he's shown he's good at building something that can compete further than what that squad probably should. You saw him winning consistent European titles, albeit the lesser one, but still, that's a big victory for him. So I like him. I think he's a good manager. And I think for them, if they're looking for long term, then he's probably a decent shout to start building something.
Tom, what about yourself? He's came in, he sort of ripped up the old game plan. He's implemented his new style straight away. They've got a little bit of teething problems, if you like, with it in the first couple of games. But is that what Arsenal need?
Yeah, I think it is. I think they, for far too long they've played Arsene Wenger brand style of football, and obviously, not just for the Arsenal fans, but I think for the Arsenal team in general, they've become very samey, very similar. You know what to expect from them. So I think it's needed that they needed to freshen up. They needed a team that were going to buy into his ideas, and I think, a new system just to get Arsenal back where they almost should belong, really, because they are a top team in the Premier League. They've won the Premier League. So I think this has been a long time coming, and I think Emery is the perfect manager, somebody who's not from the Premier League, who has these new ideas, who is capable of winning trophies, to come in and shake it up. So yeah, I think it's just at the right time, or maybe too late almost, or it should have happened a few years ago. But yeah, it's nice to see that Arsenal have a change at the helm finally.
And Tom, while they've lost both their games, would it be fair to say they've been perhaps unlucky to have no points from the two games? They were good against Chelsea. They could have had 5 by half time.
Yeah, they were good. I saw them on the opening weekend against Man City, and obviously Man City weren't firing at all cylinders, and they were unlucky there. And Chelsea, they showed flashes of brilliance at times. So I think it's a question of how long it takes for them to buy into Unai Emery's system. And I think when they do that, I don't think they'll have any issues at all, because at the end of the day, they've got probably one of the top 3 best strikers in the world currently. And they've got a lot of finishers, a lot of creative playmakers on that team. So I don't see them sort of having any issues going forward. So no, there's some flashes of brilliance there, and I'm sure that we'll see that this weekend.
Charlie, what's a good season for Arsenal?
Top 4. They've got to get back into a consistent European basis. If they want to be where they used to be, which was one of the biggest clubs in the country and always fighting for in and around those spots, then they just have to get a top 4. The longer they spend out of that, especially now Wenger's gone, the longer they spend out of that, the worse and worse it's going to get for them. And we're going to, you would hope for them, they would be going through that sort of period where Liverpool did, where they were out and sort of struggling for a while, and now they've popped back into it. You want to see them getting back into it. So for them, top 4 has to be the minimum aim. Anything below that, I think, is considered a failure, despite how strong all of those teams are.
Tom, they signed Matteo Guendouzi in the summer. Do you think, going by, I know it's only 2 games in, but he's looking like he could be one of the finds of the summer?
Yeah, he looked a real prospect the last couple of weeks. I think he's a little bit, tentative at times. He almost looks a bit unsure of himself, of what he can bring to the team. But from what I saw, for how young he was, I didn't realise how young he was. He looks very composed. Arsenal have turned down the chance to sign N'Golo Kante a few years ago in that sort of similar position. They signed Xhaka instead. So, he's not exactly lived up to the price that they paid for him. So again, it's nice to see a manager come in, freshen up, and actually trusting someone that's young and by all accounts has a lot of potential. So I think whilst he is only young, he's obviously getting that experience. And if they blood him in early, then, that potentially Arsenal have a very good young talent on their hands for years to come.
Yeah, I have to echo what you two said. I've been impressed by that Matteo Guendouzi in the middle of the park. I didn't really know who he is until I seen him play for Arsenal, but he stood out. I thought they were good in spells against Man City, but it's a bit like what we had at Anfield. You just got to accept you're up against a really good side on the day. Then against Chelsea, I thought they were unlucky. I thought they could have had 5 in the first 45 minutes. It was just on another day, Mkhitaryan and Aubameyang would be finding the net with those chances that they skied at Stamford Bridge, and that's not good. They seem to be going down the wings and playing behind the fullbacks a lot under Emery, and that's not good for West Ham, in my opinion, especially if we were to pursue Zabaleta on the right back. Masuaku, we've all got questions over his defensive abilities. So if that's what they try and expose, it could be difficult. They've been playing this high pressing game as well. Again, I think they might have success against us. The only thing that they are struggling with, I think, is their defence. A bit like us, their defence just isn't good enough for what should be a top four side. I agree with Charlie. They can get into top four. I think that would be considered a success and a foundation for building on. But as you two have alluded to, they've got some fantastic creativity in that side, and they've got two very, very good strikers who have shown they've got chemistry between them. And I do wonder if Emery is going to be bold enough to play them both from the start. I don't think he will, but both games, they've finished the game together, and when they've been on the pitch, they have connected really well. So it could be trouble for West Ham. But Charlie, could this be our third game of the season with our third formation system already, or do you think he needs to go back to what he did at Anfield and go with 4-3-3 and just try and pack the midfield out a bit?
I think he has to go with 4-3-3. The 4-4-2, I think, although we may have some of the talent for it, the midfield just isn't there for it. It just isn't. And if you're playing Noble and Wilshere together, I think you're sort of restricting what Wilshere's really good at by putting him in a midfield too. And I think Noble's just not good enough to carry a midfield on his ones. He's not N'Golo Kante. It's not going to happen. So I think we have to go back to a 4-3-3 personally. And I would suspect him to anyway, because it's against a stronger team like Liverpool. And I think it's incredibly clear we need a DM in there. And so, but it's the right decision for me. It's the right decision. He has to do it.
Mark Noble has a back injury. It could be a convenient cover-up, as he's calls for him being dropped, and Pellegrini had hinted he would be making changes at the middle of the park. Tom, with 4-3-3 being a likely formation we'll see this Saturday, who would you like to see in the middle of the pitch alongside Wilshere? As far as I'm aware, you've only got two to choose. You've got three players to choose from. You've got to pick two of them. That's Rice, Sanchez, and Obiang.
Yeah, well, it's difficult, isn't it? Obviously, Rice probably wasn't up to speed against Liverpool. Does he trust him? Does he want to throw him in a game like that? I don't think he will. I think maybe he's yet to prove himself under Pellegrini. I'm not saying that Rice isn't class, because I think he is, but I think maybe Pellegrini wants some time to assess him. Maybe he doesn't want to throw him in against there. So if that's the case, I think that he will probably start Sanchez, because obviously he was the man that he wanted. He was the man that he'd outlined that he wanted to bring in. So Obiang wasn't too impressive in pre-season. He played a lot alongside Kouyaté. So, from what I saw at the weekend, Sanchez didn't look too bad, and it's kind of just, which one's worse, I guess, at this point. So for me, I'd love to see Rice start, but I think the cynic inside me is saying that he's definitely going to be Sanchez that starts alongside Wilshere at the weekend.
Tom, our centre defence has come in for a little bit of criticism. They conceded 6 goals in 2 games now. You can pick Balbuena and Ogbonna for being at fault for either goal. Would you expect to see Diop start as a £20 million centre defender, where West Ham United can't really afford to have one of them sitting on the bench? And if so, who would you like to see him brought in for?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because Pellegrini is hell bent on playing this high line against teams, and I don't expect him to change that. But the thing is, if you're going to play that high line, you need a defender quick enough to get back there. And from what we saw, is Ogbonna's Diop is very sort of lanky, rangy, kind of quick defender who may be able to play that position for him. So, and especially like you said, if you're going to spend 20 million on a centre half, you don't expect him to be sat on the bench. So for me, I do love Ogbonna. I think he had a good couple of years at the club. I'm not saying he's past it by any means, but he in the last few years, for me, he's the amount of goals that we conceded, Ogbonna's been a part of that defence. And from what I saw in pre-season, I like Balbuena. I thought, he looked a real leader at the back. But the only issue is that, is he the kind of person, Balbuena and Diop might not have that chemistry yet. Is he going to be able to sort of pull Diop around if he makes a mistake? Is he going to keep him in a line? Is he going to be talking to one another? So it's kind of like, whereas Ogbonna gives that presence of, okay, I've been around the squad and I know the expectations. At the same time, he's conceded a lot of goals in the last few years. So ideally, I'd like to see a Diop and Balbuena partnership, but it's just how well and how effective that's going to be. Whether it's kind of in its early stages and is not quite fully developed yet.
Charlie, what about yourself? What would you like to see in the centre of defence? You've of course got the option of Declan Rice. Should you not like to see him in centre midfield?
I would prefer to see him as the defensive midfielder, but if Pellegrini does go with Sanchez, as Tom alluded to, then I would put Rice at centre back, just because whenever I've seen him, he's very good at tracking runs and very good at tracking other players. And when you've got whoever's standing next to him potentially taking a step forward in that high line, you need someone who's going to be able to move in like that, and he has that movement. However, as I said, I would prefer to see him as a CDM. And if that was the case, then I think Ogbonna and probably Diop would be the best partnership for me. I've been mildly impressed with Balbuena over Diop in the games coming up, but that Callum Wilson goal, man, he did nothing. Like, Callum Wilson ran straight at him and he just sort of looked at him and stuck a leg out as if I was doing it in the park after I'd been running for 5 minutes and was too tired. It was really embarrassing for him as a defender. And so for me, I would go with Diop and Ogbonna if I was to choose two outside of Declan Rice.
And Charlie, at Anfield, he started Fredericks against Bournemouth. He started Zabaleta on the right back position. In my opinion, that's the wrong way round. I think it should be the other way round, if anything. But against Arsenal, Emery has been trying to get the players in behind the defence at the sides. We've been playing a high line. Would it be sort of, I don't want to call it suicide playing Zabaleta, but or would you be switching to Fredericks for this one to get the pace back in the team?
It's a difficult one because, again, I haven't really been that impressed with Fredericks either. And the temptation would be, if it was Fredericks, to let him go forward because he can come back because he's quick enough. But at that point with Arsenal, like, it might be too late. I don't really know if that would be a risk I would take. I would probably go with Zabaleta, but in the same way David Moyes told him, don't go beyond the halfway line. Let whoever's on the left-hand side do that part of it. Just stay back. It's like, if we've got Yarmolenko going forward, then that's fine. Let Yarmolenko ahead of him, do the cutting inside. Let whoever it is, Snodgrass, whoever, let them do that. And just say to Zabaleta, look, you're staying here because, as you said, against Chelsea, they really, really were fantastic in getting in behind the fullbacks and pulling across the defence and causing all kinds of havoc. And with a high line, they're going to be able to do that. And I think for me, I'm more confident that Zabaleta could stop a player one-on-one than I am Fredericks at this point in time.
Tom is nailed on that Ivanovic will start front. He's also got a back injury from carrying West Ham over the last year and a half. He's due to be fit for the Emirates. Anderson probably starts through default just because he costs £40 million. That leaves one space, and you've got 4 contenders for it. You've got Antonio, Snodgrass, Yarmolenko, and Perez as your outside bet up against his former club, just like Wilshere and Fabianski is. Which one would you like to see start the Emirates?
I see. Not Antonio. I'll finish with my Antonio outbound. I'm sure Charlie has as well. Yarmolenko looked sharp when he came on the other day. He actually had a bit about him. You know, he wanted to get forward. But to be honest with you, Snodgrass hasn't put a foot wrong for me in the last couple of weeks. His delivery from corners and set pieces where I was stood the other day was very good. He looked interested. At least he was trying. You know, his delivery is great at times. So, and I think a lot of the times he's scapegoated by the fans because it just happens to be Robert Snodgrass. But on paper, yes, you think, oh, Yarmolenko should start. But for me, at the minute, from what I saw from Snodgrass the other day, he hasn't done anything to lose that place yet so far. So, for me, yeah, definitely Robert Snodgrass to start.
Interesting. Charlie, are you optimistic at all whatsoever for this game?
I'm incredibly concerned. I think if at some point it's going to click. I think the fact that he is trying to change this style so drastically, it wasn't going to happen instantaneously. And at some point it has to click. My concern with this game, though, is that Arsenal are going to have too much risk going forward that it just won't allow us to click. I think if we are to get a goal from this, it's probably going to be a long, hopeful ball to Arnautovic, who then does something magical with it, as tends to be the case. But unlike other people, I've seen glimpses of what Felipe Anderson has in his locker. Some of the passes he's been doing, like the pass to Hernandez to win the penalty in the last game, stuff like that. There's little glimpses there. And so if he can get forward and then cut inside and get into those positions where he can make those through passes, if we have Snodgrass or Yarmolenko on the other side doing the same thing, all of a sudden there's a chance, because Arsenal can be beaten. You can score with them. It's not, their defense is shaky just like ours is, just like everyone's is, but their defense is shaky just like ours is. So could we get a goal? Yes. But if we do, I still suggest us to not win.
Tom, what about yourself? How do we get something from this game at the Emirates? You know, it's this match day 3 now. Well, it's only match day 3. The pressure's starting to get on a little bit. How do we come out the Emirates without a defeat?
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm waffling, because I don't want to go on for ages about it. But I'm not worried. I'm not worried about this game against Arsenal, because I think at the end of the day, and I will say why I believe what we can do to get that. But I think at the end of the day, what Charlie said, Pellegrini has a system. I think it's interesting. It's the discussion point, because on Monday Night Football, they were talking about it as well. I saw Gary Neville's piece on what he said about Unai Emery. And I think Pellegrini has a team here who he's obviously wanted. He's bought the players. This isn't something that is going to happen overnight. This isn't something that's going to change, rapidly. He needs a good amount of time, maybe 2 or 3 windows, to get the players he wants to change the club or whatever. The mentality, he has this high line. I saw Neville said you can't adapt, to changing a system just because we're playing against Arsenal, just because of Man City. Like he said, Pep Guardiola didn't change, his system of playing out from the back just because people said it's not working. He wanted to do it further. He made it better. So I think whether it be against Man City, against Arsenal, against Liverpool, Bournemouth, whoever it is always going to be the same system. And until he drills that into the players, until he gets the players that he wants in those positions playing well, we'll see players coming out of the lineup he'll quite happily, like he took Rice off after 45 minutes, because I don't believe in Pellegrini's mind he was playing the way that he wanted him to play. I don't think he's going to take prisoners from it. And I think we're almost playing Arsenal at the perfect time, because they're going for a similar transition where he's not afraid to take Mesut Ozil off after 60 minutes because he's not pulling his weight about. So on the one hand, I know people are slightly worried. A lot of people complaining at the weekend that, they're worried that we've spent so much money on Felipe Anderson, but I feel as if I'm not worried until, Pellegrini gets this system in his mind and the way he wants it and drilled into these players. So from what I saw at the weekend is, obviously, maybe the formation was slightly wrong. I think Anderson was out far too deep at times. He was coming way too short to collect the ball. He didn't look interested. So if Arsenal are going through this change as well, we need to be a lot more attacking. We need to be, they have quite a slow defence at times, like Charlie said. So I think if we're looking at 4-3-3, we're trying to get men in behind. Anderson just looked totally ineffective when he was down on that left-hand side. Like I said, he was coming way too short. So I think we need to be attacking minded. We need to be positive going into it. And I think if Pellegrini can do that, I think, we can quite easily pick up a result. But I'm not worried, because I still think it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to get Pellegrini's message into these players. But from my point of view, we just totally shut down in that second half against Bournemouth. And if we are more attacking, I think we can, obviously, with the players we've got, we can be a lot more threatening.
I think we need to look at the Chelsea game, Arsenal's game against Chelsea. Chelsea were very effective playing direct football against Arsenal. Very, very effective. They can have all possession in the world, but as soon as Arsenal were attacking and Chelsea got the ball, they were able to go from defence to attack pretty quickly, and that's how they scored their first and their second goal. It was just through balls straight to the striker. First one was Alonso cut across to Pedro. It was 3 touches or something from one 18-yarder to the other, and it was in the back of the net. And then the same for Morata's goal. It was direct football, but that's how you get through Arsenal, if you like. I think we need pace in the side for Saturday. That's why I wouldn't play Snodgrass. While he's maybe not done anything wrong, I don't necessarily think he's done loads right. And he's also lacking pace, which I think is how you get at Arsenal on this one. That's why I'd probably play Fredericks as well. But the key for me is the middle of our park. I think we need to compact that. I wouldn't be against playing Rice and Sanchez in there behind Wilshere and saying we will just sit here, let the fullbacks do the attacking work, and let Wilshere have almost a free role, if you like. And I get your point about Anderson, Tom. That's why I would prefer to see Perez for this one, just for something different. We're not going to get many chances at the Emirates, and that's why I think Yarmolenko has got that little bit about him that he could create something out of nothing, even if it's just an individual solo goal. We need to press their back, though. The first game they played against City, you saw Cech in a back pass. He almost knocked into the back of his own net and stuff. It's just by pressing them, because they're not used to it. You two are right. They're going through transition. So let's try and take advantage of that by pressing them while they're not comfortable. They're not at that stage yet. But am I optimistic? Very little. Our Betway bet, the charity bet, it's both teams to score over 3.5 goals in the game. Wilshere to get a card against his former club, and both teams get 3 corners, 7-1. And just go to betway.com and click on the Premier League, click on our match, and it's called Bet Your Way, and find it on there. There's no link, it's not an affiliation. Betway have got 50 quid on it, so if it wins, £350 goes to Isla Fund. So get involved in that one. But Charlie, may I have your prediction for this one, please? I'm losing sort of faith a little bit in the idea of that we could be flowing attacking football anytime soon. But I think we can get a goal out of this game, at least. I think it is very possible. Like you say, Chelsea did it with very direct football. If we do the same, there's no reason why we can't. But I do think Arsenal are going to have too much for us. If we have a problem with Callum Wilson, Aubameyang is just him times 20. Like, Aubameyang's just, it's not going to be a pretty sight. So for me, unfortunately, I think it's probably going to be 3-1 Arsenal. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I just think it's if these players just buy into what Pellegrini is there to do. For far too long, we've had that losing culture at this club, and I think the moment that clicks with these players, I think the results will come. So I'm optimistic. Actually, what you said I thought was brilliant, because I will give you the score prediction. I think it's brilliant because that's the difference that separates himself from a Bilic and a Moyes. Is the great managers like a Pellegrini, they want the ball when they don't have it. That pressing from the front, I think we can do that. We play the high line, and we, like we said, buy into that system. And I'm confident, but I think perfect time to play Arsenal. I'm going for 2-2.
I think Arsenal have just got too much for us. I think I don't think their league position, I know it's only 2 games in, I don't think it reflects how they've performed in their 2 games so far. I think they were very, very unlucky at Stamford Bridge. I thought they were arguably the better side. It just took 1 millisecond of brilliance from Hazard, just cut open that Arsenal defence completely and laid the winner on a plate for him. We have players capable of doing something like that, perhaps not as extravagant as Hazard, but the problem is, so do Arsenal, and I think they're going to be more effective at it. And Pellegrini persists with his high line, and I agree with Tom saying I think he should. And over the 38 league games of the season, I am optimistic, and I don't think it's going to be a bad season. I'm just not very optimistic for this afternoon, but that's more credit to Arsenal rather than criticism to West Ham United. And I'm going to agree with Charlie's score here and say 3-1 Arsenal. By the way, if you've enjoyed this preview, drop a like on it. There will be a review on the channel straight after the game, so come along on Saturday afternoon and have a little to watch if you like. Subscribe if you're new around here. But Charlie, say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye from Tom.
See you later.
It's goodbye from me as well. Catch you in a bit.